Hi, my name is Krishnani, and I'm the Senate President at Syosset High School. Some updates that I have for you are that student government meetings have been held on Fridays ever since school started. Last week, we just held
Good evening.
Is everyone good? Okay, welcome everyone to the October 19th Board of Education meeting. It's so nice to be back in our home at Southwoods. Thank you for coming, for all of you in attendance, and thank you for watching, for all of you who are on live stream. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we begin with approval of the minutes for September 14th, 2020. May I have a motion, please? Rob Gershon, seconded by Andy Feldman. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Approval of the minutes of September 30th, 2020. May I have a motion, please? Christy Filippo, seconded by, there's a glare. Carol J. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Dr. Rufo, the treasurer's report.
As indicated. As indicated in the treasurer's report, the cash on hand for the month end August 31st, 2020 was $125,538,061.92. It also shows that the bank balances for all cash accounts were reconciled to the book balances and were collateralized in accordance with the district banking agreement and investment policy.
May I have a motion? Thank you, Dr. Rufo. May I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report? Chris Ulrich, seconded by Tom Rotolo. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Yes.
If you hold it down.
Okay, Dr. Rogers for the superintendent report, please.
You turn your mic off, I'll be able to. Good evening, everybody.
No.
I will share my welcome back to Southwoods, and it's good to have all of our systems functioning as before. So we'll start this evening with our audit report. Every year, school districts are required to perform an external audit of our business functions, and the audit firm of Cullen and Danowski, Ms. Jill Standers, who's a partner at Cullen and Danowski, has been doing our audit now for, I believe, 4 years. So Ms. Sanders, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rogers. Good evening to the Board of Education and the community. And so we have completed our audit for the year ending June 30th, 2020, and we've issued our audit reports as of October 13th, 2020. And once again, there are positive results to report for Syosset School District. I wanted to start first with the auditor's opinion. Behind the table of contents is what's known as an unmodified opinion, and it's the highest level of assurance that the Board of Education and the community gets that the financial statements fairly present in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles in the United States of America. We have two presentations of financial statements. As the Board of Education remembers, the modified accrual basis, which is the way that the district maintains their books and records. Anytime I buy a piece of equipment, it's charged to the budget and it's an expenditure, as opposed to the accrual basis financial statements, which is a reporting model for GASB 34. And in that particular situation, when I buy a piece of equipment or I go ahead and I undertake capital improvements in the district, that's shown as an asset subject to depreciation. So behind our auditor's opinion and the table of contents, there's the financial highlights. So I just want to talk a little bit because I know the school district works very, very hard to monitor their budget. And I know this was a significantly unusual year. And so when I, as your auditor, look at the financial results, just as you, the Board of Education, did, and you look at the part of the budget that wasn't spent, this is something that's, as we know, a result of the COVID pandemic, okay? It is very clear on those budgetary appropriations, things like central services, things like pupil transportation, things such as pupil costs for extracurricular and interscholastic activities. Those could not be spent with the transition to remote learning and what the pandemic brought upon the district. So the opportunity from not having spent all those budgetary appropriations was such that the community approved a capital reserve, and you were fortunately able to fund from the budgetary savings $5 million into that capital reserve, okay? The other thing that was fortunate as a result of the financial condition, the district is doing a tremendous amount of work, capital work, and the capital work was initially funded through whatever funding was available. At the time that you went ahead and you received permanent financing for that work that was done around the district, you were able to secure a very favorable rate. So the rate that you were able to secure when you went ahead and bonded back in September, because of the AA1 rating that the district had, was an interest rate that was an effective rate of 1.99%, okay? So that's a really good place to be. And then when it came time in July of 2020 to bond the remaining amount, which would be $4 million from the original $45 million, excuse me, and you coupled that with your energy performance work, you were able to get a rate of 1.66. So that's tremendous, okay, especially for savings for the school district and the community. And that's because you continue to keep your financial conditions stable, okay? You've utilized your reserves, you've budgeted them, you've utilized them, they've been spent. It's really important in this environment to keep those reserves replenished, because obviously this is the support that you will have prospectively for any increases in retirement system rates. We know that the employees' retirement system is underfunded. The underfunding is even greater than the previous year. We remember that the rates back in, many years ago were about 18%. And so to the extent that you have a reserve to cover that spike and whatever the cost may be, since it is out of the district's control, you do have the mechanism in place to support that. So I think your reserve levels that you have, they make sense, and I think the utilization of them through the budget process is a very important tool. With respect to the financial statement itself, I just wanted to maybe draw the board's attention to some new areas of the financial statement. And I know the community does not have this yet. On page 11, when you get the opportunity, you might look at the reconciliation of the reserves. So this is new, and this will walk you through by reserve type. They're all general municipal law reserves or education law reserves approved by the Board of Education. And you could see the beginning balance and you could see the ending balance. And you'll notice that pretty much the numbers are fairly close from an ending basis to a beginning basis, with the $5 million the funding into the capital reserve. Okay, so they're pretty much the same. On page 12, there's a reconciliation of the fund balance. Okay, and as we remember, it's revenues over budget and expenditures under budget, which help our unassigned fund balance, and it helps give us the ability to use funding, okay, towards the subsequent year's budget. And your funding level is higher than the previous year. When you looked at this page, I know you know that, but that's, a difference from the previous year, about $1.5 million extra than what was in the previous year's budget. And then the other thing, too, that you probably want to look at on this particular page is the level of funding to the reserves, okay? So in that number, there is the $5 million to the capital reserve, and when you take that out, you're pretty much at the same funding level as the previous year, which is a good place to be, because as I mentioned before, you're appropriating those reserves, okay? The other pages that are going to be new in the presentation of the financial statement, if you look at page 15 in management's discussion and analysis, you'll see the new bond issue from September of 2019, and you'll see a disclosure underneath management's discussion and analysis about the remainder that was bonded during the summer of 2020. Some other pages that are different than the previous year too. There's a page that reconciles the capital reserves. And back on page 53 in the disclosures, you will see by reserve what amounts of money have been funded, what has been transferred to the capital project fund subject to the approval of the community through propositions that have been passed, and then what remains to be funded and remain to be spent. So those are pretty much the differences in the areas of the financial statement. There is a report on page 65. It's what's known as a yellow book report, and in accordance with government auditing standards. So to the extent that you expend at least $100,000 in federal funding, we're required to report on the internal controls over financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations at the top of page 66. It's a clean opinion. There are no findings, so that's a positive thing also. There were 3 other documents that we issued. One was the extra classroom activity fund report, and we know that these are the monies of the students. They really are not under the control of the business office or school district. The thing that was obviously a little bit different than the previous year was the level of financial activity, okay, because of school closing. So when you look at this collectively at the bottom of page 5, it's about $760,000 of revenues that were collected because it's a cash basis report. That's the requirement for reporting. And about $713,000 of disbursements and transfers that took place. And this is very different from the previous year. The previous year numbers were $1,269,000 and $1,249,000. So that's, as your auditor, those are obvious differences. We audit the receipts and disbursements in accordance with what the State Education Department expects to see happen also. We have a communication to the Board of Education, which starts off, we have audited the financial statements. And so this would be a letter that if there were any exceptions to the way that the audit was performed in accordance with the standards, they would be noted here. None have been noted. If there were any difficulties encountered during the audit, they would be noted in this document under that area that's referenced. There were none noted. And I really did want to thank Dr. Rufo and her staff for the cooperation, because this was a typically difficult year to really try to audit the books and records. But, you know, we managed to have a portal that all the documents were uploaded to, and we had some really good follow-up from the school district on any audit areas that we needed to work on. So I do appreciate that. At the tail end of that document, there were a few audit adjustments that we proposed. And I think the thing to take away from this is that there are a total of 8. Of the 8, 3 are real accounting audit adjustments. And the big one, when you look at this, you'll notice on item 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 2 has to do with the classification of the monies from the library to take care of the debt service. So this is a gross up entry. And 3 and 4 have to do with the 20% holdback of state aid for the June payments that were due to the school district, okay? And so the reason why I bring up those 2 is because the treatment of the 20% was determined after the time that the books and records were closed, because everyone was waiting for more information from the state as to whether or not that money was going to be forthcoming. From an accounting standpoint, we have to show it as deferred, because there is a likelihood that it will not be collected in 180 days. That's the revenue recognition period. So when you look at this, there really are no entries. I mean, for a district this size, with the amount of financial transactions, I think the school district business office is doing a really good job. The management letter, we have no significant deficiencies. We have no material weaknesses. So these would be higher level internal control issues. Either segregation of duties is not there, or there's the potential for fraud or defalcation. So we noted no such thing. We have no comments along those lines. We had a comment on the extra classroom activity funds from last year. So the district put some additional procedures in place. That's a cured comment. We have a comment on the food service fund operating results. And as you know, with the implementation of services at the elementary school level, there was a significant amount of money spent on equipment. And what that does is because equipment's not capitalized for this particular modified accrual basis of accounting, it creates a deficit. So the comment here, just to kind of put it in perspective, we comment that the operating loss for the year was $602,000, and what the board should know is that the community should know that of that, $548,000 was equipment related. So that's a big difference because that puts the number then at somewhere around $54,000 loss, okay? So it's a little bit more understandable. And that's pretty much my reporting for this evening. I don't know if the Board of Education had any questions for me.
Chris Ulrich?
Hi, and thank you for the presentation. I have a question, page 15, where we're talking about the other long-term liabilities. The workers' comp went up 35%. The net pension liability seemed to quadruple from 4 million to almost 16 million. And OPEB obligation up by 80 million. Can you clarify what those are?
Sure, I will. Okay. All right. So the district utilizes an actuary to calculate workers' compensation liability because there is self-insurance in place. And so based upon the loss runs that are available from the third-party administrator, the actuary calculates what that ultimate number will be. It does not include incurred but not reported liabilities. It only talks to the fact that there are these potential claims that are out there based upon what we've paid right now. And so that number is basically a number provided by the actuary. Compensated absences, I'll just go down through the whole list. Compensated absences is the value of time that's earned that has not been paid out as of June 30th. And that stayed fairly the same between the 2 years. On the net pension liability, this has to do with the reportable share of the employee's retirement system liability. And if you get the opportunity to go back to page 43, and the disclosure goes on and on for pages, and this is the required presentation. The employee's retirement system is required to have an actuarial valuation of what the ultimate liability is, and then they look at whatever assets they have to fund that liability. To the extent that the assets do not cover what that liability is as calculated by the actuary for the system, there's going to be a shortfall position, okay? When you look, the system by itself, when you look at the bottom of page 48, is only 86% funded according to the actuarial's calculation. So the allocable share of what's reported, and this is for the GASB 34 accrual basis financial statement, is Syosset's covered payroll versus covered payroll for every participating employer that's covered through the system. And there's an allocation then that's detailed by percentage in pages, back on pages 44 of that $26 billion shortfall in the employee's retirement system. So this is not the district's, okay? This is not the district's, this is ours. This is their reportable share according to GASB 34 of whatever the retirement system's liability is. Okay, and then the last one, the other post-employment benefits has to do with health insurance for retirees. And so the district also is required to have a actuary perform a study based upon census information on what the healthcare cost trend rates are. And to the extent that the assumptions use different discount rates between the years, and the discount rate that was used by the actuary, and these are rates that are pegged to the pronouncements as far as what you can use, was 3.51% for 2019. It was 2.21% for 2020. And as we know, anytime you change a discount rate and you lower it, the liability goes up, okay? Because I'm saying basically that I'm expecting what I have to not grow as much in value. So that's the reason for those. And there's a number of pages in the disclosures that go through the OPEB assumptions that are used by the actuary, the healthcare cost trend rate, and those start in the middle of page 49.
So just to clarify, so for the third item, the $11.6 million difference, that's basically the lowering of the discount rate at the state level impacting the entire system, and this is our portion of it, or?
That's your proportionate share.
our proportionate share, and as the interest rates go down, the liability goes up.
Correct. And
Because, yeah,
and the
but-
systems change their interest rates also, the discount rates. When you get the chance, I think the thing that's kind of helpful, because we're not auditing it, we're required to rely on the actuary's report for your proportionate share information. I think the thing that's kind of interesting, if you look at page 58, top of the page has the teacher's retirement system information and the employee's retirement system on the bottom. You could see that the discount rates that both of the systems used are quite different. And you could see the impact of a change in the discount rate. And I think the thing that's pretty telling is if you look at the teacher's retirement system for 2016, they had an 8% interest rate. Everything looked great, okay? And then the rate went down to 7.5% as far as what the actuary used. And you could see then we had a shortfall. So this is very rate sensitive to your point, and it's something, unfortunately, I'll say that as your auditor, since it's part of the GASB 34 information that we need to assemble, that you need to report on, but we know that you can't, you can't control the investments, B, you can't control the contribution, boards set the contributions, and I think you pay timely, that's the most important thing. Districts have had to defer their payments because they didn't have the cash flow ability to do that, but you pay timely. And same thing on OPEB in that schedule that shows the reconciliation up to the other post-employment benefit liability. You could see what the district's outlay has been for retirees, and that's part of your budget, and you pay that timely also.
Okay. And then theoretically, 5 years from now, rates normalize and start going back up. We would hopefully see these numbers move in the opposite direction.
Should be.
Knock on wood.
I don't know how long that's going to take, but.
Right.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Mr. DiFilippo?
Yes, with the audit, do you do checks of various purchases throughout the district?
What types of purchases?
Any type of purchase that's made, you know, is it following the right protocol, the right form, the right signatures?
So you have an internal claims auditor whose responsibility is to do that. The board has appointed the internal claims auditor. I am the external auditor, so I rely on the information that we audit on a sample basis. So I'm not looking at every transaction that gives rise to a cash disbursement. I have a sample based upon a population and some criteria that we used for sampling. So I do have some information, but the better information would be coming from your internal claims auditor.
Okay, well, I wasn't asking you to report on every transaction. I was asking what samples do you do and what area?
So we do cash disbursement sampling. We do payroll because it's the largest part of your budget, a lot of work on payroll. Different attributes such as hiring, such as separation pay, such as extra pay, a number of different things we do.
What about with, we've done a lot of construction within the district. Do you?
There's a sample of capital project fund transactions that we sample also. And we're sampling them back to
but not only on the project, but on the change control process.
On the change orders? Your architect is certifying the change orders. I'm not auditing change orders. That's not part of the general purpose financial statement audit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Tom Rotolo?
Thank you for auditing it. Couple of questions are, we had substantial construction last year. What procedures did you perform on the substantial change orders?
Okay, that's what he just asked. So there's a sample of transactions that are tested based on the population, and I'm making sure that there's appropriate support for it. If it's something that's under the domain of the architect, that there's an AIA that's been completed and signed off on, and then it's gone through the internal control audit process.
Okay. Also with, obviously this year with COVID, is there any new pronouncements that are going to affect us for next year that we should be aware of now and start to plan for?
Not with respect to COVID, but there are two pronouncements listed in the financial statement disclosures. One has to do with 84, which has to do with fiduciary activities and how to report them. It has to do with scholarship funds and extra classroom. And the other one has to do with leases. and leases, as we all know, in the commercial world also, but that's in the subsequent year that you'll have to consider this.
Okay. And then also with the effect of whether we might have a shortfall in funding from the state, will that affect our credit rating?
I think everyone's going to be in the same situation as a school district or local government if there's a shortfall in the state aid. I'm not sure to what extent it's going to impact your credit rating. That's probably a good question for bond counsel. Or your fiscal advisors, actually, not even bond counsel, your fiscal advisor. That's a better question for them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm just going to ask from this side of the room, Carol and Chris, when you raise your hand, if you could try and raise it above the screen, I'll be able to see it much better. Just having difficulty seeing the arm. That's good, yeah, but that's good too. Thanks.
All right. So this is the part of the meeting where we usually hear from and about students. And obviously we're trying to maximize students' time in classroom. And at this point, we're going to have a virtual presentation from the high school student government representative. So hopefully we'll be able to bring this up on video. The board will
Hi, my name is Chris Rinaldi, and I'm the Senate President at Syosset High School. Some updates that I have for you are that student government meetings have been held on Fridays ever since school started. Last week, we just held 9th grade elections, and there was a strong showing from the entire grade, as well as having smooth and efficient elections being held. In place of freshman orientation at the beginning of the year, we had clubs submit videos to Flipgrid explaining what their club is and why new members should join. The link for those videos can be found on the Syosset homepage. In terms of our committees, the Students Combats Corona Committee has been working on videos for Spirit Week. The Student Advisory Committee has been working on courtyard project updates so that our courtyards look as nice as possible. The Food Service Committee has been working on making a food pantry for those in need. Spirit Week was held last week, and we plan to hold another one in the spring where we expect sports to start up and start playing. Interact had a Chipotle fundraiser with all the money going to the Sunrise Day Camp. Some club updates that I have for you are that DECA is registering new members and are preparing for the state competition that leads to their international competition. Robotics is programming and building new robots for upcoming competitions. Forensics has won first place consistently in the last 3 weeks and hopes to continue their streak this Saturday. Model Congress is prepping new members for the upcoming Yale conference being held online this year. That's all I have for now. Have a great rest of the week.
Given the amount of time we put students on Zoom this spring, it should come as no surprise to us that Mr. Pamnani is a natural at doing it that way. Next, we're going to celebrate our National Merit Commended students, and one of the assistant principals at the high school is going to recognize them.
Good evening. I'm Chris Raffini, one of the assistant principals at the high school. I am very proud to announce that 38 Syosset High School seniors have been named commended students in the 2021 National Merit Scholarship Program. These students placed among the top 50,000 scorers of more than 1.5 million students who entered the 2021 competition. Congratulations to the following students: Kiran Anand, Autumn Avery, Tejas Chandakar, Jenny Depiche, Harrison Fusey, Aryan Gotra, Jake Greenberg, Benjamin Gutman, Casey Ha, Aaron Hafkin, Elsie Ho, Joshua Hong, Pooja Hudid, Michelle Jin, Jamin June, Samuel Canterman, Kieran Kelly, Daniel Kong, James Kramer, Mark Lau, Kevin Lee, Eric Liang, Trinity Liang, Cheryl Lean, Kenneth Lynn, Kirsten Louie, Brian O, Irene Park, Maya Raghu, Yasraj Sinha, Eugene Song, Maxwell Spiller, Unzel Tariq, Angela Wang, Michael Yan, Michelle Yang, Julianne Yoon, and Andrew Zhang. Congratulations.
October is National School Board Recognition Month, and we have the president of the Syosset Council of PTAs, Ms. Allison Birch, with an appreciation for the school board.
Good evening, everyone. This week is the School Board Recognition Week in New York State. Syosset Council of PTAs, which includes all 11 PTA units, would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank the 9 members of the Syosset Central School District Board of Education for their dedication to the children in this community. Your selflessness and devotion to our district has not gone unrecognized. With your efforts, our school district is one of the top public school systems in the nation, one we are also very proud of. We are the district that takes pride in taking care of all of our children. We have programs that help prepare our students for their futures. We know that this year we will embark and embrace many unknown challenges ahead of us. We would like to take this opportunity to thank you for your hard work and for volunteering all of your time. Your generosity and endless dedication to our district has not gone unnoticed. We have placed something in front of you to show our appreciation to each and every one of you. On behalf of the Syosset Council of PTAs, once again, thank you all for all of your hard work, time, and dedication. Thank you.
Allison, thank you so much for those beautiful words. I know I speak for everyone up here when I say that it's a reward just to be able to do this work, to be able to contribute in the way that we do for the students, for the staff, and for the community. But it's always nice to hear such wonderful words from you and from the PTA, and we really appreciate your support, so thank you.
So every month we try to give the board a report. We'll start up with the instructional reports next month, but this month wanted to we've talked a little bit about the facilities work that has gone on in the district over the course of the last year and a half or so. And some of the major projects have finally come to completion. And I just wanted to take us through that. And then I have a couple of observations in the superintendent's report to share with you as well about reopening and how that's going and a couple of other things. So we've gone through a multi-phase building project. We had phase 1. We're now well through phase 2 and coming towards the end of phase 2. The next thing we'll do after this is the energy performance contract. Obviously, all of these came from building condition survey that was completed in 2015, identified a series of opportunities and shortcomings in the district that needed attention. So we prioritized those by the things that were most in danger. First of all, obviously, we would want to address that immediately. Items that were out of compliance that needed to be brought into compliance, and then other areas of the district that we thought were either health and safety concerns or would likely fail before the end of their useful life, and we wanted to replace them before that failure occurred. Obviously, there were a lot of challenges with the campus layouts. I can't even imagine what it would be like to try and accommodate all of the traffic that we have on our campuses had we not done all of the traffic work. So it obviously, in hindsight, looks prescient, but I don't think that any of us can take credit for that. It just came at exactly the right time. So we have some before and after shots. Obviously, this is the old track and field with the dirt road behind the bleachers and over to the barn. This is the new turf field and 8-lane track with the jumping and pole vault facilities towards the right-hand side behind the bleachers. The roadway that was built that is now accommodating drop-off for both the high school and Southwoods Middle School, and improving traffic flow, and a long curb area here for drop-off at the middle school. Students have been taking advantage, the community has been taking advantage of the track and field most of the summer after we reopened it. It's terrific to see students back out on it again. We've been doing some intramural and off-season training activities on these fields, and students are so excited to be back outside and exercising again. We refurbished with a grant from Legislator Lafazan's office and built 2 tennis courts. So the tennis complex is in much better shape than it's been in a long time. And obviously with more courts, it's possible to complete the matches sooner, which when we get back to having tennis as a sport will mean that even on those shorter days later in the fall, we can get all of the matches in before darkness falls. This is pictures of the old weight room. I used to joke around that the old weight room didn't fail the fire inspection, but it looked like it might have. That's obviously been demolished and replaced with a new facility that is terrific. It adds additional bathroom capacity in the high school, something that was lacking, and we have outdoor bathroom facilities that will service all of the outdoor spaces on the high school campus once we get, again, back to having outdoor athletic activities. And that will allow us to keep the building locked and yet provide comfort for people who are participating in athletic events. It also encloses walkways that students used to walk outside between. We had originally enclosed that with a metal fence to try and provide some security. So we were able to eliminate that fence because now students will be walking inside the building. This is what the interior of the weight room looks like. Obviously, we chose Syosset themed colors. And the good news is we have students who are working out in the room as part of gym class. It's now a teaching station for the phys ed program. And we have students that are being trained on how to use the equipment in the after school time frame by the coaches and staff in the athletics department. We renovated our science labs. They were in very tough shape. The new labs don't look exactly as we had planned because students are sitting behind plexiglass barriers, but that's a sign of the times. And in the lower left-hand corner, this is the science research room. This is where the students that we annually celebrate in the spring who have accomplished success with the Regeneron Science Scholarship competition. This is where they work on their laboratory experiments in the school. Another place where students would walk outside in between classes frequently was the front open air walkway. We also didn't have a good location now that we're scanning badges for students to accommodate large numbers of students entering school. Now, obviously, we're doing half the student body every other day, but because we're stopping students to take temperatures, it's actually been very useful to have a large entrance with a lot of space so that we can manage the traffic flow into the school building on a daily basis, and it certainly gives the high school a sense of place. This is what the interior of the vestibule looks like on the right-hand side, and obviously we have the sort of the velvet rope idea so that we can control the flow and make sure that every student scans their badge. That lets us know who's in school on any given day, so it helps us with attendance. It will also help us if there's an emergency and we need to have a really firm head count quickly. And it also makes sure that the people who are in the school are supposed to be in the school, and the badge makes that possible for us. At South Grove, we had another place where students, this time very young students, kindergartners and first graders, would walk back and forth between the annex and the main building as they went to gym class or music class or to use the library. We've connected those two buildings with a corridor, so now the students don't have to walk outside in the middle of the winter, and we don't lose instructional time with kids, very young kids, putting on, losing, finding their mittens, going back and forth between the buildings. So it has really made the two facilities work much better together. As I mentioned, there's been a lot of paving activity, and just in time, because all of this has facilitated drop-off and dismissal operations for parents. Berry Hill still remains a very challenging campus because it is so tight. But the changes at Whitman have created a lot of curb area, and that's made it possible to do more drop-off. Same with the high school and with Southwoods. And we built the car loop over a year ago, made some additional enhancements to that area this summer to try and streamline the bus exit. We saw a couple of choke points in the design, and we were able to shave those choke points out. And my feeling is that it's working very effectively right now, but we're constantly seeing if there are areas for improvement. We have been over time improving air conditioning in the school district. We've been adding rooftop AC units and installing. Right now we're going through the process of doing mostly installations at the elementary schools. We're nearly done with that project. And the next thing that will be up is to look at the secondary school spaces that remain. Some changes that were made as a result of our addressing the pandemic and working through the reopening. Obviously, we've engaged in a lot of ventilation upgrades. We're going to be engaging in more ventilation upgrades. Every building we had to identify isolation rooms and create negative pressure systems so that if there were contaminants in those rooms, they were exhausted out as opposed to exhausted into the hallways. Bathrooms, there are a number of touchless fixtures that are installed. Obviously, the fewer touch surfaces we have, the less likelihood there is of transfer of pathogens from one person to another. In our classrooms, we have the desktop barriers. We removed an awful lot of furniture and had to store it in these things that look like tractor trailer pods out on the campuses. You'll see them all over our campuses in order to really push the desks out to the corners of the classrooms. We've installed a number of portable hand washing stations. Hand washing still remains the best way to reduce contamination on your hands. And to the extent that the weather will allow, we've tried to increase the amount of outdoor instructional space and lunch space so that students have a place to eat more comfortably. What does that look like? These are elementary bathrooms that have the touchless faucets, the touchless soap dispensers. The classrooms with the desks spaced 6 feet apart. Some of the desks have been converted into Jeeps, which I think is cute. Touchless paper towel dispenser, portable hand washing stations that are arrayed around the district, so there are more opportunities for students to wash their hands. And 2 ways of taking temperatures to try and streamline admission to the building. So handheld thermometers. There are a number of regulations about how we have to be prepared with personal protective equipment if we're using handheld thermometers. Simpler is to have students do the walkthrough thermometer where they can just take their own temperature and have it observed by a staff person as they enter the school. Students have been taking advantage of these outdoor instructional spaces, and we've put a number of tents. These tents are inside a courtyard, so they don't pose an additional security risk being outside because they're fully enclosed on all 4 sides by the building. The next project, as Ms. Sanders mentioned, we got a very favorable interest rate on the energy performance contracting borrowing that we did. When this project is over, the district will save about $1.2 million a year in energy costs. So none of this is glamorous. It's replacing old furnaces that are not efficient and installing solar panels. I guess that's semi-glamorous as this thing goes. Energy management systems so that things turn off at the right time and turn back on again and we don't waste energy. A cogeneration unit so that we'll have some electricity, but then also the waste heat is used to heat hot water. Clearly lighting fixtures is a huge priority item. And then a cogeneration unit here at the middle school that will also serve as a backup emergency generator. So some reopening information, a little more of a superintendent's report. I'm going to show some slides on some of the data that we're following to make decisions, some thoughts about how we communicate, and some future ideas for how we can communicate as well. Just on communications, I know that we've tried to be as transparent as we can be when we learn things about, and we knew we were going to have students and staff that would either have contact with or become sick with COVID themselves. We're trying to communicate about that. What we want to do is make sure that we're accurate, but we also have an obligation under federal law to protect privacy. So we inform people, but we also can't go into very much detail because it has to be impossible to work backwards and figure out who we're talking about. There are some situations where all that's required is a notification. When we use text or a robocall, the deciding factor is if someone needs to do something different. So if you can go about your regular business and be every bit as safe, then email is the notification that's required. If you need to do something different in your daily routine, we'll text or call you so that we can jolt you out of what you would have ordinarily done. With every single one of these cases, and there's a whole team of us that work with the DOH, the Department of Health, every time we learn of a case, and we're coordinating at a staff level, and then I'm coordinating at a leadership level with the Department of Health. There are a number of conversations that go back and forth. Every consequential decision that we make in consultation with the Department of Health and the school physician. And it's when all three of us are on the same page that we feel comfortable with those consequential decisions. So we haven't had any differences of opinion. We've been working very well together, but that's always our algorithm, is that we all have to be on the same page, then we move ahead. One thing we're exploring is the creation of a COVID hotline so that there's a one-stop shop. Parents have been terrific about notifying building principals when there's an issue, but we think that having a centralized location for that would be better, and so I hope to have some news on that shortly. And the state published a COVID dashboard, and there have been some of the inevitable growing pains for that as a new tool. So we're going to try and supplement that by having a Syosset COVID dashboard. I'll show you that in just a moment. And this will be something that we can control so that we can make sure that it is absolutely up to date and up to the minute. We've had to have some corrections to the state's website, and those corrections sometimes take a day or two to get fed into their system. And so this will let us have a little bit better turnaround time. So this is data that is published by New York State and Nassau County Department of Health. It is the daily percentage of positive tests in Nassau County. Some of these data will incorporate people whose home address is Nassau County, even if they are, say, college students away upstate somewhere. So you'll see that in early September, there started to be a climb in the number of positive cases. Obviously, that was something that we were paying very close attention to. About mid-September, that seemed to crest and come back down again. At the beginning of October, we again saw a little bit of a rise that seems to have crested and is starting to come back down again. Obviously, this represents our families, many of our staff. We're paying very close attention to this. The second is, of course, our own home community here, Syosset and Woodbury. Between the two hamlets of Syosset and Woodbury, we cover about 90% of the population that is covered by the school district, so this is a good approximation. And you see essentially the same trend, an upward increase in early September that fell back down again, another increase in early October that appears to have crested and fallen again. Obviously, if we see any dramatic changes in these rates, we'll know that there is the potential for community transmission here in the Syosset-Woodbury community, and we'll seek some guidance from the Department of Health and the school physician about how we should be reacting. What I will say, and what I said in the message to the community, is that we have a very robust plan for safety in the buildings, and because of that very robust plan, a couple of things have happened. First, we have not had to close very often. We've only had one closure so far. We have also not had to quarantine many people as close contacts. Very few people are deemed by the Department of Health as being close contacts. And third, because they are now very familiar with the procedures and policies that we have in place here, our contact tracing goes more smoothly and more quickly with them because they know that we have the barriers, that we have the 6 feet, that we are really robust in enforcing mask discipline. And because they know how seriously we take that here, they are able to clear us more quickly. So you're seeing faster turnaround from us in terms of being able to report to the community. Those are all good things. It means that we're doing the best we can in a difficult time, and we're getting better at working together with our partners in government. This is a mock-up of, although the data is accurate as of October 9, this is a mock-up of what our dashboard will look like, the Syosset dashboard. And one feature of this that I think will be useful to folks in the community is where the line is current cases. These are cases where we're not yet 14 days out from the case, but resolved cases are cases that we announced, and now 14 days have passed, and since no other cases have come out, we can assume that those cases are now resolved. So every 14 days, the cases that are on line 1 will hopefully drop into line 2 without having any other impact, and we'll be able to have a sense of overall how many cases we've had, but also where there are any places where we're going through that process of letting the case elapse. So I did want to, that concludes the slide presentation of my superintendent's report. I just wanted to report to the board on a couple of other things. First, I did mention earlier ventilation. We have been working with the architects and engineers. I've asked them to go through their plans, identify ways that they can do value engineering in those plans. One of the things that you as a board made clear to me at our last meeting is your concern about the cost of the project and wanting to make sure that those costs are managed. So we've been working hard to try and identify places where we can do the labor in the job more efficiently. Most of the cost in this job will be a labor cost. Those are also the costs that have been hardest to control in the last 2 years where the mechanical disciplines are concerned. We've also reached out to the state education department to start to talk to them about how to make sure we move quickly through the approval process there. Obviously, we are hoping to have the ventilation finished before the winter season gets here so that we have the best ventilation possible even after it becomes uncomfortable to leave windows open. And then lastly, some residents noticed that there was some earthworks going on at the Syosset landfill, the former Syosset landfill, which is now town of Oyster Bay Department of Highway. The earth movement appears to have been behind the town of Oyster Bay Animal Shelter. We did reach out to the town of Oyster Bay to get clarification on what was going on. As a precaution, we kept students inside today at South Grove Elementary School because I wasn't clear on what was going on and I didn't know what potential there might be for dust migration from those earth moving operations. We did hear back from both the town and from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. They indicated that the fill that they are moving has been tested. Their tests of that fill indicated that there's no contamination in the fill. The EPA indicated that the activities did not disturb the cap and that the contaminants on the site are below the cap. So it is their opinion that that the activities are within what the town is permitted to do, and they did not believe that the activities would have any negative health impacts. So we asked our environmental consultant to evaluate the statements that we got from both the town and the EPA so that we could make decisions about tomorrow. But based on that feedback and the evaluation that we got from our environmental consultant, the town has said that they will do dust mitigation procedures in coming days. So we don't see the potential for any impact to our facility, but we'll be watching it closely. So that concludes my superintendent's report. Ms. Frankel.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Are there any questions for Dr. Rogers based on his superintendent's report? Tom Martello.
Hi, Dr. Rogers. Thank you, everybody, the superintendent, the staff, the custodians, the IT people. This has been a tremendous effort for us to have such low cases of COVID and everything that everybody did for us to get to this point. So I can't stress enough how much work was done and what a position we're in. Couple of questions for you, Dr. Rogers, is the New York City School District is doing testing for COVID. And also, obviously, it's free in the state to get tested. What we've seen is that the cases are not spreading in our school. I'm assuming they're coming in from outside. Is there a plan, or can we consider having testing, even if it's not mandatory, for students and faculty?
We're not able to mandate the testing, and in New York City, the testing is voluntary as well. My understanding is that they have permission from about 72,000 parents, but the city system has, and this is just what I've read in the newspaper, so please don't hold me accountable for the numbers, but they've got permission from 72,000 parents to do testing. They have 1.1 million children in the New York City school system. So it is a large sample when you think about 72,000, but relative to the size of the population, it's somewhat small. We're not able to require that. We have been exploring with one of our healthcare partners the possibility of seeing there are some new rapid tests that are becoming available, and we're exploring the possibility of whether we could offer those rapid tests as a convenience to parents, because the state regulations require a negative COVID test for someone that exhibits a symptom to return to school. So I'm a little premature on being able to say whether those conversations will bear fruit, but we are having those conversations.
A couple of other questions. Obviously, during the pandemic, we've had to take some aggressive measures quickly. When will the Emergency Power Act end? When would it be feasible for us to go back to as the Emergency Powers Act to no bid contracts, and when would that happen?
So the board in August, the governor announced on a Friday that we would be reopening in person. You had a board meeting the subsequent Monday, and you created an authority to do emergency purchasing so that we would be ready in time for the opening of school. We have not done any purchasing under that authority since school has opened, and I don't anticipate that we'll need to do any more purchasing, with one caveat. There are some items that are still in very short supply, and it's very difficult to get. I'm thinking specifically of MERV 13 filters. So we've gotten our first shipment of MERV 13 filters. The facilities department has been replacing the existing filters with the MERV 13s as they come in on the trucks. But it's very difficult to get those in a regular kind of supply. And because they're such fine-grained filters, they do clog up more quickly than other filters and need to be replaced more quickly. So that's the one item I could think of that we might need to continue to do that. Even with that authority, where possible, we have still purchased off a state contract, and where not possible to buy off state contract because the inventory is just all gone, we've still sought 3 quotes from any vendor that we've done business with, and always chosen, obviously, the lowest vendor that could deliver on time.
So my next question was, oh, okay, there we go. Last meeting, we had the ventilation, we approved the ventilation. Can we have a hard cap on the number that we would need future board approval if it goes over?
So I had hoped to have a firm number for you tonight. I did ask if we could have that. I think I'm probably a day or 2 away from having an estimate. I do know that we've met now with 3 different vendors to get them to give us some pricing. You have a price opinion from the architect and engineering firm. The first vendor came in under the price opinion from the architect and engineer, so that's obviously encouraging. The other 2, I think we'll probably have back in a day or 2, and I'll have a better sense then. And then we are doing these value engineering changes to try and drain some of the labor costs out of that project, which will reduce it further. So I hope to be able to give you a firmer report and a firmer number, and I'm hoping a day or 2.
One more thing, Dr. Rogers. So, as I said before, this has been a Herculean effort to get school open, classes going, COVID, and construction. Obviously, this takes up a lot of your time in addition to all of the other things that you have. With the amount of construction that we had and we'll continue to have, in addition to the energy power saving thing, I would like to recommend for us to have an independent third party to oversee some of these contracts, proposals that the architects are proposing to us. I don't feel that you should be put in that position to have to make that decision. And I would like to have somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in us give us their feedback on these projects, because it's a big expenditure for the school district and it's a lot of your time.
So just so I can better understand your suggestion, we have a construction manager now who oversees the construction of all these projects. That's not the responsibility of the architects and engineers. They design the projects, and the construction manager manages the contractors that go through the construction process. Are you looking for a second opinion on the building condition survey and the items that need to be replaced? Are you looking for someone to participate in the bid review process once we put these projects out to bid? The energy performance contract has already been signed with the contractor, that's Johnson Controls. So the overall amount of the project has already been set. And at this point, it's a single number. And so Johnson Controls, if they are unable to build it efficiently, they're hurting their own profit, as opposed to there's no impact on us.
So I guess my point is do we have someone who is an independent third party that has no vested interest in the bids, because the reason I'm bringing this up also is I've been on the board over a year. We've had change orders. We've had rebuilds. So to me, I kind of feel like who is representing us that has that requisite knowledge that can say, you know what, we don't think you should do it this way, kind of a check on, because this is a big expenditure for us. So I would like to know who's our independent expert that has no vested interest on who gets the contract, what the amount of the contract is.
Right. Well, that person is the architect. They have no vested interest in who gets the bid. They're not associated with the people who get the bid. They don't have any financial interest in who the bid is awarded to. They participate in the bid review. We have a bid review committee that meets when the bids are out. The architects will do the technical review because they have specifications of the type of equipment that has to be used, what standards it has to meet. We don't have that expertise. They'll review those parts of the bid. Dr. Rufo and her team will put together and try to do as best as possible an apples to apples comparison of the pricing. Sometimes the pricing is structured differently from different vendors when they respond to the bid. So work has to be done to try and harmonize those numbers so that they can really be compared fairly to one another. Often when we do the bids, we will have alternates in the bid, and there's a choice to be made for whether you want to take the base bid, whether you want to take the base bid with an alternate. Sometimes one vendor will be a better base bid, but if you look at the alternates, they're the better deal with the alternates. So there's a lot that goes into making that decision. But when you say doesn't have a vested interest, the architect and engineer, they design it, they help us build the bid packages, they help us evaluate the bid packages, but they don't have a vested interest in who is awarded the bid.
So who's the check on the architect? Because
so if there was to be a check on the architect, then I can think of one of two places. One is we work with the construction managers, and in the construction meetings, the construction manager is at the table along with the architects, engineers, and ourselves. And a lot of what we talk about at those meetings is how can we do this more efficiently? What kinds of things are we seeing? Do you have suggestions for how to do this better? And often, and especially what I've seen is we hit a lot of snags here. There are a lot of things that we've discovered here that were not done appropriately in the past. So a great example of that is trying to build the roadway behind the bleachers. There were a bunch of wires that were buried in the soil in that area. The wires were not buried deep enough for code. So the price opinion that we had for building that roadway was completely inadequate because we had to go through with an electrician discover all these wires, figure out what they were connected to, rebury them. And for some of them, it was cheaper to build the roadway up than it was to dig the wires down. But those were unknowns that couldn't have been anticipated, and they do result in changes and more costs, there's no question. And there are a series of things that I've discovered in my time here where we're discovering things that needed to be done properly, and they weren't done properly the first time, and they needed to be fixed. And that has certainly contributed to cost.
Okay, I completely understand. I still think that we need some check on the architects, because there's been a lot of other projects that either the planning wasn't there properly, the bid was way low. So I understand unforeseen circumstances, absolutely. My concern is we continue to have change orders and we continue to be over. I can't stress this enough. That's my concern.
The way you would do what you're suggesting is to pay twice for architecture. So you'd have one person do the design, and then someone else would have to do all of the legwork that was necessary to evaluate that design to tell you if the design was appropriate or not. So I don't know who would do that, obviously, for less money than it costs the architects to do it if we're going to duplicate their effort. So I understand what I think you're asking for, but I don't know how to deliver that in a way that doesn't cost even more than what cost you're worried about in terms of changes that had come after the fact, because so much work would have to be done in order to essentially evaluate twice the same job that needs to be performed. How we try to get at that is, again, when we do, the construction management firm has an estimating department, and we use, obviously the architects give us their cost opinion, but then the same project is sent to the construction managers and they give us, their estimating department goes through and does an estimation. Sometimes the estimations from, and we use Park East as the construction manager, sometimes their estimators come up with very different numbers. And then we have to go back and try and reconcile why there are very different numbers between the architect's cost opinion and the construction managers. The construction managers are closer to the industry. So they're managing not just our construction, but in multiple school districts, and they have a real sense of what the cost on the street right now is for X type of labor or X linear feet of wire, or, and it's literally that granular that they price these things out. And so when there is a difference in the cost opinion, that's when we, kind of stop everything and go back and say, why is there such a big difference? And often the construction managers will recommend less expensive ways of constructing something. So we see an initial drawing, and then after we start talking with the construction management firm, they have ideas and suggestions from other places where they're working, different architects that they work with, and they provide us with feedback, and we've made a number of design changes to try and incorporate that.
Chris?
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Dr. Rogers, I have several questions, but I want to pick up off of what Trustee Mr. Rotola said. I believe there are consultants out there that we can deploy, and their job is to look at the original work that was to be done. And then when a change order comes in, they look at it and say, well, wait a minute, but the architect said this is the way it's supposed to work. So if that's the way it's supposed to work, then they do, a validation check, okay? And then there has to be some sort of discussion about who has to really pay that. And, H2M, who is the only architect for the school district, does have an incentive overall. They get paid 6% on the whole overall, whatever the project costs per the contract. So I just wanted to add that to what he had to say. So I have one, my first question is, the vestibules in the schools, the way, if I understand the way that to work, is you go through the first door, and before you can get to the second door, you of course have to be, check your credentials and all that. And then the first door has to lock, and then the second door can open. Is that correct?
That's correct. Actually, the two door release mechanisms are electronically connected to one another, so the second release will not release until the first door is closed.
Okay. So I just have to look. So, so has there been any issue or response from the local Syosset Fire Department? Because when they're used to going in, they're going with they're going with a crew, okay, if there's an automatic alarm. Their intention is if there's a fire alarm, the problem is that there's the potential fire in the building. So they're looking to make sure, they're going to get the line run outside, they're going to get the different crew to do the different roles. They may not all get in that little vestibule, and how do they get past the other door? Has it been a problem? Because I know we've had automatic alarms.
There isn't a problem. I can just tell you I'm so incredibly appreciative of the Syosset Fire Department. They have been terrific partners to work with. One of the construction projects we did was to upgrade all of the fire alarm systems district-wide. It's been a big job. It resulted in a bunch of false alarms that they had to respond to. I really appreciate their patience with us as we've worked through some of those kinks. And I have a great relationship with my counterpart, the superintendent there, Mr. Randazzo. When they respond, now to your specific question, when there's a response, there is a vestibule, but there are also just regular doors. And the security are there to open the doors and make sure that they can get in unimpeded. So if you think about that high school vestibule, there's the airlock door for visitors, but on either side, there's 3 regular doors that are locked, but a security guard just pushes the crash bar, opens those doors, and as many firemen as necessary can stream through the doors until they have the response that they want. And our security is there to support their response in whatever way they need.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. So you talked earlier about the airflow, and I just want to reiterate, I never had an objection about doing this. It's that I wanted to be done, kind of like with a third party to do the assessment. So there's the concern out there when you do ventilation, you just don't do ventilation and hope that it does what it's supposed to do. There's an airflow to it. There's a certain scientific method on where the air enters the room, and if there's a potential virus, how it pushes it, okay? Replacing it 10 times, every 10 minutes or every 20 minutes could be meaningless if it's not moved correctly. So I don't know if H2M has done that or they are doing that, because I don't want to find out later that we got to do a change control because the airflow wasn't being done right. So can we get them to sign off on that or at least look into that?
One of the things that they are looking into is trying to come up with more even airflow. So if you look at the ductwork that was recently installed here for the air conditioning system that is almost complete, in these soffits, you see 4 diffusers, the rectangles up there. Those release air, obviously, through those panels. There are other systems that have a series of smaller holes that run all along the soffit and then would disperse that. So there's less forceful air coming out in a couple of small areas and more air, same amount of air, but not as forceful because there's more exit and escape places for it. So we are looking at that with them. I will ask them your question directly and have them give us a response to that. I do know that one of the suggestions from CDC, State Education Department Facilities Planning, is if you're using windows and you have portable fans in rooms, they recommend that you aim the portable fan outward so that you're not stirring the room, but you're exhausting the room. So that is a concern that people have and are looking at. But all of the recommendations that I've seen from ASHRAE, CDC, et cetera, have focused more on the number of changes of air per hour than they have on exactly how the air moves in the room.
Okay. And you know, you use this room as an example, and I'm not going to comment on it because I'm not going to pretend that I'm any sort of expert in that area. It's just what I read, and what I read in the CDC, and what you said earlier. I also read that because there are a lot of schools out there and buildings that just don't have the resources that some other schools have. So the other concern I have is, I think you stated that with the recent ventilation project, okay, and to go back to what you were talking about, you're going to ask H2M about the ventilation and the airflow. It's my understanding that the way the schools are structured, in one particular building, you could have so many multiple systems that then they may appear to operate as one, but they're not. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh. That's correct. So our buildings were built over the course of a number of years. They were designed differently, all of them. That has also proven to be a challenge. The elementary schools, for the most part, operate similarly. They all have rooftop-mounted ducted ventilation and heating systems. And so those systems provide for fresh air. They also provide the opportunity to filter recirculated air. We are able to source MERV 13 filters for those buildings. And so as those have been coming in, we've been replacing the existing filters with the MERV 13 filters in those buildings. And so for the most part, the elementary schools actually present a very good design, a very robust design. It has ventilation that actually, in most places, exceeds current standards. So that's a good thing. The handful of places that are a little different in the elementary schools are the portable classrooms. And what we recommended to the board was that we use these small suitcase-sized appliances called energy recovery ventilators, ERVs, to fix those rooms. And again, those are not the most dramatic problems, but I think fairly straightforward to solve. The secondary schools pose a much bigger challenge. First of all, they're two-story buildings, so rooftop-mounted units are harder to get to first floor spaces. We have a number of spaces in different wings of the buildings, and particularly in the high school. Different wings and corridors in the high school were built at different eras. So there are some that had very little to no ventilation, and others that have unit ventilators installed in every classroom along the exterior walls. And it really depends on which wing and which hallway you're in and what year that was constructed. But altogether at the secondary schools, we have about 160 rooms that have very little ventilation, absent the open windows that we've been using for ventilation so far this year.
Okay, this is my final question. You said that 3 vendors were looked at for the latest ventilation project. Okay. However, I don't think that the school district looked at the New York State Office of General Services. And the reason I bring that up is that I did some research. I have a list of 6 major players here in Long Island: Hempstead, Stony Brook Hospital, Rockland County, City University, Hunter College, SUNY, and Stony Brook University. These organizations, these are just a sample, and recently, since September, filed bids through OGS for what was called emergency COVID-19 mitigative response. And I'm looking at the one in front of me for Hempstead, for their parks and different buildings. They issued them on September 11th. They would do September 24th as an example. So within 2 weeks, they ended up closing it. So I would assume that they were, they got the bids and then they were awarded it. So this is something that not only for the ventilation project we could have done, I think moving forward, we may want to have the district look at this to see. I don't think it would cost a phenomenal amount of money to add them on there. I've been here a while as trustee, and even the former superintendent, I haven't seen them really access this to, my recollection. So I think this is another avenue we should take a look at and add to the list when we're looking at projects in the future.
Well, OGS is the State Office of General Services. They are not a vendor. It is the state's vehicle for doing some sort of public bidding process. So if I'm not familiar with any of the, I'm certainly familiar with SUNY Stony Brook, heard of it, but I'm not familiar with any of the projects that you've just described. I'd be happy to look at it, be happy to have H2M look at that and evaluate it. A couple of questions that occur to me quickly are, first of all, to bid those, they probably had to have all of the bid documents and drawings completed. We're not at that stage yet. Second is, if they're conducting a competitive bidding process, obviously that adds time. We're hoping to get the ventilation constructed before we enter the winter season. I don't know if their deadline is to have this done before winter or if this is work that they want to improve during the course of the winter. Just unclear to me, obviously from this conversation, whether these are comparable projects, but there's no reason not to evaluate whether they're comparable projects. One thing that is challenging in the construction space is with other kinds of purchasing contracts, the state has created what are called piggyback opportunities, and you approve these almost every month at the board. If there is a publicly bid contract out there that gets good pricing on something, we can take advantage of that pricing by piggybacking on someone else's bid process. It spares us the time and expense of going through the bidding process ourselves, and we get the same good price that they got. But in construction, you're not allowed to piggyback. So that creates some difficulties because there is a Nassau County contract for HVAC work, but we can't piggyback on the Nassau County contract. One of the contractors we've talked to has said that they will hold to the Nassau County contract price, but it's not us using the Nassau County contract to access them. So same thing with Suffolk County contracts and with BOCES contracts. So typically what happens, and again, I'm not familiar with what you're referencing here, but typically OGS also holds contracts. And so if there is a contract for a good that you want to purchase or for labor, usually they have a negotiated price per hour for labor. So if there is a contract that OGS holds and we're allowed to piggyback off of it, then we would take advantage of it. But without knowing exactly what you're referring to, it's hard for me to know if it's something we could take advantage of.
Well, I could email you the information, but I'll give you just, I know we have a lot of other business, but I'm looking at, and it does say that these requests offer consulting services for HVA. They range from HVAC systems for HVA filters for the hospitals, for Rockland County, also HVAC. They have public bid opening announcement here. They have invitation to bid, okay? And then I'm sure some of these municipalities might have all the designs in order, and then others may not, that they would require. It depends upon what you put in the...
Their bids for construction or their bids for filtration?
These are the ones... The ones that I searched was specifically for HVA systems.
To build and construct them or to provide parts for them?
I'll send them to you. They're for new systems, replacement of systems. In fact, there's another project going on here, which is a $30 million project. And that project, I think it's funded by the state. And the purpose for that, here it is. Purpose of that project is Next Gen HVAC Technology Challenge. This will include improvements to cold climate heat pumps, compressorless HVAC, losses associated with current thermal distribution system, advanced HVAC system controls improvements, and integration of renewables storage with conventional HVAC solutions for decoupling of the sensible and latent cooling requirement to improve air conditioning efficiency and reductions in peak cooling demand. This one is between 15 million to 30 million. I'll be happy to email it to you. Take a look. Sure. Thank you, Dr. Rogers.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll have audience to the public. So if you have a comment for the board, please come up and give your name and your address before you begin your 4 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, before I start, I have 2 comments.
All right, could you give your name and your address, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Ralph Catapano at 76 Terrahans Lane in Syosset. I have couple of comments that I'd like to ask the board and get responses on. The first one is, why is there no live streaming tonight for tonight's meeting? Okay, that's the first question. The second question is, over a month ago, I sent Dr. Rogers and the board an email concerning the very serious situation at Cyril Wire. Not one of you had the common courtesy to respond to that. That's very unprofessional and quite disturbing. In the private sector, this would never be tolerated. Is it the policy of this district that if you send in emails on life and death situations that maybe some people don't like, that it is ignored? When I speak to a district employee, I expect that district employee to speak to me with respect.
Mr. Catapano, please face the board when you're asking the board a question. Thank you.
Now I'd like to make a comment about Dr. Rogers in the last couple of days with the Cyril Wire situation. Last week, this has been going on there for the last 2 weeks. I don't think the town of Oyster Bay is being fully honest with you, and I'm being polite when I use these words. Last week and the week before, they have been coming down local streets without covers on this soil that we know has cyanide in it as per the CDC, Center for Disease Control. That is a fact. That is in the reports. Now, the fact is that when you're looking from a second-story bedroom window, okay, if you're walking along the street, you can't see what's inside the truck. But from a second-story window, you can look in the truck and see that it was a third to a halfway filled. That was done for a reason, because as you're walking along the street, you would never see that. There was no covers on any of this soil. These trucks were going down Terrahan's Lane, Woodbury Road, Moneta Hill Road, Plainview Road, and Bethpage Spagnoli Road. Now, after it was placed on Facebook in the last couple of days, which we know the town monitors, the situation has changed. Lo and behold, today, Dr. Rogers, the path of going to Old Bethpage Town of Oyster Bay facility changed. Where did it go today? Well, it left Town of Oyster Bay, went under the Seaford Oyster Bay Long Expressway overpass, and then went onto the expressway at exit 43, onto the Seaford Oyster Bay, got off at Old Country Road and made a left-hand turn. Then went down Bethpage Spagnoli Road. So when they say to you, what they said to you, I don't think that was exactly the truth. We have a life and death situation here, and I think the board in this district and yourself need to take this much more seriously.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Catapano.
I would like the commentaries, your responses to my questions.
Yes, you'll get a response, but we do that at the end of audience to the public. So thank you very much. We've written down your questions. And are there any other members of the audience who would like to come up for audience to the public? I should put my glasses on. Okay, that concludes audience to the public. All right, I could just answer the first question, which is why is there no live streaming? There is live streaming tonight, and there's a link on the website. Yes, I apologize. I'll speak right into the microphone. You know what? You're having difficulty hearing and I can't see through the fog. So I'm going to look at you blurry and just say that there is live streaming tonight. I'm sorry you were under the impression that there wasn't, but there's a link on the website to how to access live stream, and the public can watch tonight's meeting via live stream tonight.
I only asked that because I got 5 or 6 messages on my phone since I've been sitting here to ask that question.
Yeah, Mr. Catapano, I just ask you not to speak from the audience, but these are our answers to your question. So if there was a misimpression, I'm sorry, but we have a link on our the front page, the first page of our website to get to the live stream. And so all you have to do is click the link. And agendas as well. When you go into the Board of Education page, you can locate the, Mr. Catapano, please take your seat.
I can't hear you.
I'm going to speak louder. Of course.
If you wouldn't know any better, you think it was done deliberately.
Yes, so there is a link that the public can access from the Board of Education website that gets you right to the live stream. And you can see on the very first homepage where it says to access live stream, press here. And so, yes. So live streaming is being done. As for a former Sarah Wire email that you sent, I can only say that I don't recall you sending one a month ago, but I assure you that it was a mere oversight if I didn't respond to your email. I take no issue with comments about Sarah Wire or any other comments that are coming from the public when they send an email. I just don't recall this one. So if I missed this one, my regrets.
I think I can illuminate both of those points a little bit as well. First of all, as we have gone through the last 6 months, the format of how we do board meetings has changed a number of times. I think the public has kind of gotten used to our Zoom meetings and where the links are for the streamed Zoom meetings. Now that we're back in public, we're back on the Granicus system, which is the streaming system. Oh, we're not? Okay. You're using YouTube tonight? Okay. But the link is on the website? Yeah. Okay, the link is on the website. So I know that we've been trying to get back to using the Granicus system. I thought we had worked the kinks out of that system for tonight. But the goal is to get back to doing the streaming from the auditorium the way that we had always done the streaming from the auditorium, because then the stream and the minutes and the agenda are all on the same site. And so it's, I just think, easier for the public to access it. But we've been obviously making do as we've been going through the pandemic. Second point on your email, as I emailed you last Friday, my apologies for not having responded sooner to that email. At the time it came, we were getting a flood of emails on a whole bunch of different topics. There were 3 different people that were responsible for trying to manage the email. Some emails, including yours, fell through those cracks. I apologize for that, and it's not our intention to not respond to someone. And certainly, I sent you what I hope you took as a very courteous response and courteous apology. In terms of your points about the town of Oyster Bay, I asked them to share with me in writing what their activities are there. I asked also the US EPA to share with me in writing their activities. They have both sent me emails. So I've asked our environmental consultant to evaluate those. She has both of those emails. She's going through them right now. Obviously, I'm going to try and I will make the decision that is safest for kids at South Grove, period. The evaluation of those emails is something that she has the expertise to do. She'll advise me, and I'll act accordingly. As in terms of where the trucks have been going, whether they're covered, whether they're not covered, whether they're appropriate for residential roads or the roads that they're taking, obviously that's outside the purview of the school district. I certainly understand why residents might want to learn more about what those activities were and might want to have. I think it would be better for the town to communicate with residents about its activities rather than communicate through us as an intermediary, because there's always the possibility that I will get it wrong and misinterpret something. So I'd prefer not to be the town spokesperson, but I do have to apprise myself of what's going on so that I can make good safety decisions.
No, Mr. Catapano, I'm sorry, but we don't allow speaking from the audience. I appreciate it. An audience to the public is closed. But if you have any other, no, Mr. Catapano, I'm talking. Audience to the public is closed, and now the board has the floor. There is no more audience to the public because it is closed, and we would appreciate that if you, and we would appreciate it that if you have any further, I would appreciate it that if you have any further information that you would like to inform the board about, we would be happy to receive an email. But please do not speak from the audience again.
I'm asking you now.
Okay, and we're moving on to discussion items. The first is the Industrial Development Agency application for Amazon warehouse project. We've been advised that this Thursday, Amazon warehouse project will be coming before the IDA for an application. It is our understanding that this is not going to be the last hearing before the Industrial Development Agency, but that the Board of Education will be able to comment as well as the rest of the public. So we are now open for discussion if anyone wants to comment on the Amazon IDA hearing. Okay, moving on to the second item on the list, board meeting format. Mr. DiFilippo.
This is for the format?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I took a look at the format, a couple of things the board, we should take a look at for the community is, number one, we've been, since this unfortunate situation with the virus, we've been having more than one meeting a month, as you know, sometimes possibly three. So my thinking is until we get back to the more normal that we used to, we schedule a second meeting each month, agreed upon the board here. And then if we don't need it, we can cancel it. And in this way, we're letting the community know ahead of time when we would have the meeting, and it would support Dr. Rogers and his staff that when they need to get something done, which can only be done in a public meeting like this, approved with the trustees here to vote on it in the public, that we do something like that. And until then, also, we on the website, we put down the meeting when we're going to have a second meeting. But I think we also need to look at, I believe we used to have this, a link right there embedded on the main page. So the residents don't have to navigate elsewhere where the agenda is, okay? And also, if we need to go back to the virtual or the Zoom meetings, I think we need, just like tonight, we had audience to the public come up to the microphone and speak. We need to have some method and an easy forum for the public to communicate to us. One, that they know there's a meeting. Two, they know what the agenda is in sufficient time. And three, they may wish to comment. And if it's not, ideally it would be great if we have the technology where we could just get them on the Zoom meeting and they come on. If not, then there has to be a way for them to send in, the messages, either through a chat or something of that means. I'm just bringing these items up. I'm hoping that my fellow trustees share similar thinking along these lines, and together we may come up with a more creative package. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. My thoughts on all of these. With respect to a second meeting, it's something that's actually come up for a number of years. The board has contemplated either on its own through work sessions, or we've talked as recently, I think, as the end of the mid last year about how we'd like to structure our board meetings. We've looked at different districts and how they've handled it, and the board each time has decided to keep these meetings the same. My personal opinion has always been that I appreciate those school districts who have meetings twice a month, but they are not full board meetings twice a month. What they have done, as far as I know, is schedule one of those meetings as a working meeting where you would have your presentations, superintendent's reports, staff and students coming up, and then actively the board is doing some work. And then on the second day, you would have audience to the public and business. And those meetings set up in that way, I think, are beneficial because you get to streamline the meetings. Audience to the public, there's more time because you have a whole meeting set up for business and audience. And then we can spend the other meeting doing the work of the board. So I've always been in favor of that, but the reality is that we've discussed this many times, and thus far, the board has decided not to do meetings two times a month. But something like that, not scheduling 2 full meetings a month, but really structuring 2 meetings a month to serve different purposes, I think is very helpful. Scheduling a full second meeting a month, I foresee being somewhat problematic if we're viewing them as a way to alleviate the need for a special meeting, only because special meetings come up when and if we need one, and we can't always anticipate the time for that special meeting to come up, the need for the special meeting to come up. And so I can imagine scheduling 2 full meetings and then still needing a special meeting because the timing of the issue didn't really coincide. So that's just my thoughts on that. With respect to a link for the agenda, we have, sure, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
But there might be a situation where the district needs to get something approved in the second meeting, and it may be appropriate to have like a mini full meeting. And I'll give you a perfect example. The last meeting we had before this, where we talked about the ventilation system, you know, maybe the public wanted to comment on that, and that was a big ticket number. Okay, so I mean, how do you handle that? You know what I mean?
Okay, that goes to the third comment that you had made. So I'm going to go to the second comment first, which is a link for the agenda. And when you go into the Board of Education tab on our website, there is a very specific link that says agenda. So I think it's actually a pretty sensible location for the agenda. The issue with packing in, from my perspective, more links on the homepage is that we have so much on the homepage that I almost think adding more may be more difficult to find. But when you think of a board agenda, board meeting, to me, the logical place to look is the board tab, and the agenda link is right there. So just my opinion, I like it there because I think it makes sense. And maybe we just need to send an email out to everybody to remind everybody about where they can find our links to the board agenda and live streaming. Maybe that would be helpful. And then with respect to virtual Zoom meetings, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that whenever we've had a Zoom meeting, we've also had audience to the public. It's just been by virtue of email. So there's always a way for the public to make their comments just as they do live, only they're not in person when they do it. They send in their email, and then Dr. Rogers has been responding to them at our virtual meetings. Sorry, Rob, and then was that you? Chris.
I'm not in favor of having a second scheduled meeting each month. Been on this board for over 7 years. Every single person on this board is committed and works really hard. Whenever we've had any item or a thing that needed immediate attention, we've been really good about coming up with a short date for everyone to meet. The system is working. I don't think it needs to be changed. Like Tracy mentioned, anyone can email a question that they want addressed at the next board meeting at any time. If you send in an email, you can email your questions for audience of the public. They will be read at the very next meeting. They will be answered at that meeting if possible. I think that we've already put there's a lot of work that we do that the public doesn't realize. During this pandemic, we have met, like Chris mentioned, 2-3 times a month times. It works. We do it. We manage it. I don't think we need to have a separate scheduled meeting. And if you schedule a second meeting for the purpose of discussing these things, it may not be at the right time. Sometimes we may need to meet sooner than the next scheduled meeting. So that's my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry. So one of the things we may consider, and if they've gone out, I maybe haven't seen them, but before the board meetings, I know there's a post with a link and here's the agenda. But if we could send out a district email informing people, reminding them the meeting is on this date a few days before, here are the agenda topics. This is where you go to get the Zoom link. And if you want to attend, this is where it's held, date, time. Because while there is a link on the board, on the website, things can be hard to find. Not everybody's visiting the Facebook page on a regular basis, but if they're getting a notification, and we send out a lot of notifications, letting them know the meeting is coming and this is what's being discussed, I think it would go a long way with the community. One of the things I think we should consider is having audience to the public after the discussion items, because it's very hard for the public to comment on something that hasn't been fully discussed yet. They can comment on a few things, and then things come up at discussion, it's all fleshed out, and it's too late for anybody to make a comment. So similar to saying that we have audience to the public via email, they can forward in questions or comments, but you're asking them to do it a day or two before the meeting. Nothing's been discussed yet. There's got to be another solution. So, towards what Chris was talking about, if we're having a Zoom meeting, can we have the waiting room and give people the opportunity to actually make a comment? Because asking them to send in a comment a couple of days ahead of time before anything's been discussed really isn't giving them a fair opportunity to make that comment. But I think moving audience to the public after the discussion items really gives the public a fair opportunity, because we're here to serve them. We're not here serving us, we're here serving them. And if they don't know the depth of these items and they haven't heard it discussed, it's really hard for them to make a comment.
Tomatolo.
Thanks, Tracy. You and I have discussed this before with a second meeting, so I agree with you and with Chris, and with this Chris D and Chris U. It's a lot to ask of the administration, the board, the parents. It's 10:15 now, and our meetings are pretty long. In addition, I feel like the board is very active, so we're involved in a lot. And I think these issues need time to be discussed and vetted. So I'm in favor of that second meeting, just also from a scheduling point of view, so at least you can put it on your calendar. So if you have for the work or if you have other obligations, you know that that's open. And again, we can cancel it. But obviously, all of us are very passionate about the issues. We're all involved. Again, if we need to cancel it, we do. But definitely transparency and feedback and timeliness is difficult when we're just having special meetings. So I think it's tough on everybody. Everybody has a long day. I mean, we're asking a lot. I mean, I know that Dr. Rogers has been here since 7 in the morning. It's not fair. We're expecting too much from, and thank you guys, by the way. It's hard to listen to us all night. So I appreciate it. It doesn't go unwarranted.
Andy.
as far as the two meetings, I would be open to discussing that. I agree with Tracy, though. I'd like, if we did that, I would rather it be split in two, because if we just have two full meetings, they're still going to go to 11 o'clock at night. So I think I agree with Tracy in that we should have the two separate, two sections on each one and to cover things. But again, like Rob said, even if we have a second meeting, there's still going to be times where we have to have an urgent meeting because time is of the essence, like last time with the ventilation. And so we could end up having 3 meetings. And now we're canceling a meeting, and now we're really confusing the public. So that's my 2 cents.
All right. Thanks, Andy. So I would say that there's interest in further discussion on this issue, and that we can do that at another meeting or another workshop that the board is. Oh, sorry, Susan.
I just wanted to add that I think sending the email out with the link to the agenda and to the live stream for the meeting might be extremely beneficial, because people do have trouble dealing with the technology and finding it. And to make us more accessible to the community, it would be great. I know I sent out the link to a few people tonight. And I also think it would serve as a reminder, because people are so busy. So if they get an email that says, if we send it at 3 o'clock the day of the meeting, and it says, tonight at 8 o'clock, there's, here's a live stream and here's the agenda, it might remind them to tune in so that we maybe will get more community involvement. And then, it's always great to have more people here and hear it if it's possible to do. That's it. Thank you.
Chris? Oh.
Okay. So, Mr. Gershon, my request for the second meeting was for the courtesy of the board and the district and the community. Okay. And that's what a trustee does. And that's what we have been doing. And that's what I'm willing to do. However, I have found that last minute meetings from the district, whereas I've done my best to make them, has met with hardship on the short notice. And the ability to schedule a second meeting, like Mr. Rottola had indicated as well, it puts it on the calendar. Like I said, at least 5 times already. If we don't need the second meeting, we cancel it. But we at least have something on the agenda. It was brought up that last week's meeting was time of the essence. Yes, it was. But you want to know something? That was supposed to be discussed a week earlier. And we couldn't discuss it because the board didn't get the information, because our Outlook system was shut down for some reason. Okay? So we couldn't get it that day. And we had to cancel that. But if we would have known that we were scheduling a meeting on such and such day and what we were going to be discussing, we could have probably still have had that meeting. So it's not cut in stone. And Tracy, we still have to. I'm not hearing how to accommodate for Dr. Rogers when he needs to get something approved. And it might have to be in that second meeting. And we've done things like that before. And we had a call for a quick meeting for people to come in. So
it sounds
we need
like
to
this is
accommodate for that.
Sorry, it sounds like this is something that the board is interested in further discussion in, so we'll continue this at another time. The next item for discussion is consolidating calendar breaks. Christopher Ulrich.
I think this is in connection with the question I had shot in, but I know with many of the colleges, they are consolidating breaks to address travel concerns. So many of the students coming back from college for Thanksgiving are staying and doing the exams remotely. Spring breaks are being consolidated into winter break, again, to reduce the travel and the health risk of people coming and going, leaving campus and returning. And whether, and I'm not saying we should, but whether the district has looked at this and whether consolidated more extended breaks versus people leaving, traveling, coming back, leaving, traveling, coming back is something that we should be looking at.
Thank you, Mr. Ulrich. Well, and thank you for giving me a sense that this was something that you were interested in. I took the opportunity to have this conversation at one of our cabinet meetings and to kick it around with the cabinet. And I also raised it, the superintendents in the county are separated into quadrants. Ours is the northeast quadrant. And so I raised this last week at a meeting of my colleagues to see if anyone else was familiar with this and had been exploring it, if it's something that's being discussed in any other communities, just to kind of take pace of where we're at. So the latter, no other community at this point has been talking about it yet, but many of my colleagues were familiar with what's going on with colleges. Some of them have college-age students of their own. And when we discussed this as a cabinet, one challenging issue presented itself, and that is because there is a county-wide calendar, particularly for BOCES programs. For the most part, school districts stay on the same schedule because we all take advantage of BOCES on the same schedule. So if we were to, hypothetically, take the February break and marry it to the New Year's break, then we would have students with disabilities that would not get their BOCES services in that, let's say, first week of January. And then when we were in session in February, there would be no BOCES program for them to go to. So they would be stuck, I guess, at home with no services. So I think that would be a pretty big logistical challenge unless there were a lot of districts that did it at the same time. So I'm certainly willing to keep talking to colleagues to see if this is something that gains a little momentum, but my impression is that that would be a pretty daunting challenge to overcome.
That's okay, sorry, I'm just unfamiliar, but are all the districts taking the same week in February, all the school districts and BOCES?
Yes, all the ones in Nassau County. And this is typical of the different regions of the state. Some of us might start a day or two earlier. Jericho starts earlier than everyone. Some may have, obviously we take a couple of extra holidays here in Syosset, but the big break weeks are all aligned among the districts. And then the algorithm at BOCES is BOCES collects the calendars from everyone fairly early on, and then they set their calendar based on where all of the breaks align. So sometimes like I'll call it the Easter Passover break, depending, may wrap around to 1 week, and in some districts that happens, and in others it doesn't. So there might be a day or two where we're all misaligned, and maybe the BOCES calendar is different, but the big chunks of time are pretty much aligned.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to comment on that calendar break issue? Okay. NISBA conference is coming up, and Mr. DiFilippo is going to represent us at the annual business meeting where NISBA resolutions and local district resolutions are up for a vote. There are many, so to give Mr. DiFilippo an idea of where the board stands, we have a worksheet that shows what the Nassau-Suffolk Executive Committee in the resolutions meeting had resolved in terms of whether they were going to support or reject certain resolutions. And now the board has had an opportunity to review the worksheet as well as the descriptions of the resolutions. And my question is there anyone that wants to put forth a different opinion than those of the executive committee or the resolution meeting? Okay, Mr. DiFilippo, thanks for representing us at the meeting. Yep.
We have, Carol, did you have one you wanted to?
Sorry. Hi, thank you, Tracy. Mr. DiFilippo, these are the ones recommended by the executive board, committee. So I don't have a different opinion from these.
You're okay?
I'm okay with the decision, yes.
Right. That's what Tracy's asking, because the executive committee and the resolutions committee are giving an R, which is recommend support. I have one of my own on item 27, which is not recommended, and should we consider this? I think it has some value in it because not every trustee is aware of being, they know they're a mandated reporter, but do they know how to report if they see signs of child abuse? Because if we see that, we are to report it, and we should know how to report it. And how to report it doesn't mean you pick up the phone and call up the board president and say, I suspect child abuse. Doesn't mean you pick up the phone and call Dr. Rogers and I suspect child abuse. You report it, period. That's your job. So is anyone else in agreement with supporting number 27?
Okay, so if I may, I just want to read 27 so the audience knows what that says. Resolution 27 is brought not by NYSBA, but brought by the Webatech School Board. And it says NYSBA is to support legislation that would require mandated reporters to participate in periodic refresher course related to signs of child abuse, as well as the process and requirements reporting it. And I just want to point out to the board that is different but related to resolution number 12, which was brought by the Albany School Board, which is supported. And that is that NYSBA is to support legislation. Sorry, it's not number 12. It's a different one. Hold on one moment. Okay, 19. NYSBA to produce and widely recommend adoption of a board policy or language to existing policy related to child abuse, stating that adopting district will encourage and facilitate all school personnel to participate once every 3 years in course workshop that presents information on signs of child abuse and responsibilities of reporting it. So the difference I just wanted to point out between 19 and 27 is that 27 mandates reporters to participate in a periodic refresher, while the resolution that's been recommended is that NYSBA is going to recommend that boards adopt policies that will promote these regular course workshops for staff. And the reason why number 27 wasn't recommended was because NYSBA and Nassau Suffolk felt that this amounted to an unfunded mandate and that it should be within each school district's purview as to whether and how often they have those seminars. So just before anybody engages in discussion, I just wanted to point out that one is required, one is encouraging, and typically NYSBA has taken a position that they make recommendations to school boards, but they don't want to require them to do certain things. You hope that school districts understand their culture, what they're capable of doing, and they make the decisions that work best for their own communities.
So with I had it on. The difference with that is on 19, it says every 3 years. Okay, that could be a long period of time. The other thing is that it says that the board would have to, this board would have to adopt a policy for the language on reporting child abuse. So we may have to also change the policy. I'm fine with either one, as long as it covers doing what's necessary with that. but I think the 3 years is a little of a long period of time.
Yeah, the number 19 isn't to mandate the adoption of a policy or policy language. It would be that NYSBA would, if you go onto the NYSBA website, they have all sorts of sample policies that they recommend for school districts. And then as we know, because we've redone our entire policy book, we also have attorneys who work with many school districts and have their own verbiage that they use and recommend as well, as taking into account NYSBA's recommendation. So for 19, that's really just a recommendation for an adoption of a policy. Like they'll put up a sample. 3 years is, I guess, for this circumstance, a recommendation. But for me personally, I like the idea that our school district can develop their own program and define periodic the way they wish in terms of what works for courses or discussions on child abuse. So I would prefer staying with the recommendation of the non-mandated adoption of policy. That's number 19, as opposed to 27, the mandate.
Okay, well, I'm fine with that. It's just, I think we should take it up with the board at another time, maybe. And we determine, like, for example, a new trustee comes on board, you wouldn't want that trustee to wait until the 3rd year to do the training. We should look to have some type of onboarding for trustees, and that might mean they do it within, say, the first 3 months or something like, hypothetically like that,
More?
No, I'm sorry. I forgot to comment on the IDA. And this is a quick question. Newsday, in that article, right? They said, the headline reads, developers seek tax breaks for Amazon facility. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of this, but I know that I recall reading something where the property cost something like Simon $30 million. I have a feeling that Amazon is not buying this, okay? They're not buying the cow. They're just buying the quart of milk, okay? So it says, Newsday states the developer. Can we find out? I think this is Simon asking for this stuff. I don't think it's Amazon. I don't know.
Yeah, the application that was on the Nassau IDA's website states that Amazon is the leaseholder and Syosset Park is the owner of the property. And the application to the IDA is a joint application between the two entities. So the business arrangement between the two entities appears to be that Amazon is the lessee and Syosset Park LLC is going to be continue to be the owner of the property.
Right, so they're going to benefit from, if they get approved, the mortgage tax revenues, the 15-year reduction in property taxes, and the tax exemptions of $7.8 million.
Yeah, I'm not expert in this by any means, but both of the entities, Syosset Park and Amazon, appear on the application before the IDA.
Okay, there is no unfinished business. The following items are new business. A1 is the approval of staff changes for certified staff. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Feldman, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? Tom.
Okay. I saw on approval request for unpaid childcare. Does that mean that if you're a teacher, I thought we had scope for childcare. Do we provide any childcare for our teachers and staff and faculty that's on site for them?
Only if those members of the faculty are also Syosset residents and Syosset parents, and then would be taking advantage of scope like any other parent would. But we don't offer on-site childcare for teachers who are not residents here in the school district. I can explain what this particular item is. This is typically after maternity leave has been exhausted. I don't know that that's the case with these two particular individuals, but people will request unpaid childcare leave subsequent to that in order to extend that leave period. That is typical.
And in this case, since obviously these are short-term times, do we have any kind of anything that if a teacher needed to bring her child to school, we used to have this at work, where actually we had, it wasn't all the time, but if you had a situation where you're able to bring it.
We don't have that yet where there's some kind of on-site childcare. We have had the most superficial conversations about this with scope. The challenge would be trying to, A, find a place to put it because we are just so jam-packed, and B, how we would staff it without a sense of what the participation levels would be. But for right now, the biggest problem would be space.
Are there any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A2 is the approval of 2020-2021 stipends and hourly rate activities. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Chang, seconded by Mr. Ulrich. Are there any questions? Mr. Rotolo.
I just want to make sure this is the right one. This is the revised stipend? The summer revised? A2?
We're talking about A2, yes.
Okay, so just what was the situation with the revised?
I think I'd have to ask Mr. Karam, Dr. Karamore to talk about what the changes were between the original item and the revised item. I know that I asked them to review all of the stipends and compare them to last year and which clubs were present last year. I know that there are several clubs that are not operating this year and those stipends were removed from the list. And there were a couple of clubs that were, what we do with the clubs is they have to operate for a year without a stipend in order to prove that they're viable. And then in the subsequent year, they become official clubs. So I think we lost half a dozen clubs and gained half a dozen clubs. We lost 5. We gained 5? Gained 5, lost 3. So that's what the revisions were.
Okay. So I still have another question, if I can keep asking. So on these clubs, do we, I have no idea how the reporting structure or our internal control procedures or checks are in this, but do we kind of analyze these clubs to say, look, we had a stipend here, $14,000. Did we have 2 students in the club? How do we kind of evaluate to say, okay, is that the 1-year process that you're saying to kind of evaluate to feel like what our return
I'm not intending to cut you off, I swear. So the club system, similar to how athletic coaching stipends are done, is on a point system that evaluates how many kids participate, how extensive the participation is. So if you think of the High School Musical, that is every night, hours and hours of practice, rehearsals, tons and tons of kids to supervise. Those are substantial stipends. The smaller clubs, the clubs that are just getting off the ground, they have much smaller. We do require the clubs to take attendance and to let us know what kind of attendance there is at those clubs. Again, there were several clubs that were not operating, and so we ended those clubs. So there is some oversight over the clubs. There is a sense of attendance, and there is a sense of scale between which clubs are really demanding in terms of the time of the club supervisors.
Do we have any student feedback on the clubs?
Dr. Curry, can you respond to that for me, please?
Yes, sure. So there is student feedback. The student council meets with the students who then report to the building administrators, whether it be the assistant principals at the high school level and the elementary principals. So there's ongoing feedback so that each year, as the building administration sits with the student council to determine which clubs they'll be running, they're definitely generating by student interest, as well as then entertaining the possibility of transitioning or modifying clubs in order to increase student participation.
All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A3 is the appointment of per diem substitute principal for Robbins Lane Elementary School. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Gershon. Seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B1 is the recommendations of the committees on special education. May I have a motion, please? Mr. DiFilippo, seconded by Mr. Ulrich. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B2 is the recommendation of the Committee on Preschool Special Education. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Levitan, seconded by Mr. Feldman. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C1 is the authorization of service contracts. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Falco, seconded by Mr. Ulrich. Are there any questions? Yes, Tom.
On the grant, we have the grant consulting firm, the renewal, the $79,000 per month. Do we evaluate? Do we have any idea, have they gotten enough grants to validate their consulting fee?
Yeah, so Mr. Rotolo's question was, do we evaluate their success? They have been doing better than break even, but it has not been overwhelming. I believe we should keep them on for at least one more quarter. We've structured our arrangement with them so that we retain the right to terminate our agreement with them on a quarterly basis so that we're not stuck with them for an entire year. But there are a number of FEMA grants that we need to write, and I think they'll be useful to have them as a grant writer for us because the FEMA grants, A, are important, B, are complicated, and so having them as a resource to take care of that for us. But we have been evaluating that. I think we should give them one more quarter and see if they can produce a little bit more, but it has not been a windfall.
Right, but I know there's a big lead time by the time you write the grant and get it back.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C2 is the authorization for special education and or nursing contracts. May I have a motion, please? Mr. DiFilippo, seconded by Mr. Gershon. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C3 is the acceptance of independent audit report and corrective action plan year ending June 30th, 2020. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Ulrich, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C4 is the authorization for contracts for federal Part B funds. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Feldman, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C5 is the authorization for contract BOCES project. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Chang, seconded by Mr. Ulrich. Are there any questions? Yes, Tom.
Not getting the hang of this. The BOCES one, I know this is kind of the 5-year one, but have we again put this out to anybody else? Have we evaluated other options? Have we considered bringing this in-house? Well,
Yeah, this is by far the most cost-effective way for us to purchase technology. What comes along with it is professional development and training that is performed by BOCES. They do the unloading, unboxing, setting up, et cetera. And then the state reimburses us for about 50% of the cost of the project. So any item that is bought in this way basically is underwritten by the state. So that makes it by far the most cost-effective way to do these purchases.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C6 is the authorization of motion for BOCES Technology Program project. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Ulrich, seconded by Mr. Feldman. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C7 is the award of Nassau County Director of School Facilities Purchasing Consortium cooperative bids. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Chang, seconded by Ms. Falcove. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C8 is the authorization for change order for high-tech air conditioning. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Ulrich, seconded by Mr. Feldman. Are there any questions? Yeah. Tom.
Dr. Rogers. So can you explain what this is, this update? What's this one for?
Yes, so when we were doing the air conditioning work, there was asbestos that was discovered that was not on the school district's HERA report. So every school district is required to have an inventory of where we believe all the asbestos is. But obviously will always be places that were overlooked at some point when these reports are put together. So we have HERA reports going back for years. When they started doing the work on to do the air conditioning installation, they discovered asbestos in what's called the Little Theater at the high school and then the hallway outside of the Little Theater. So they had to stop work on the air conditioning, remediate the asbestos. That wasn't part of the original design. It was discovered during construction, but once you touch the wall, once you open it, you have to remediate it. So that's why there's a change order.
All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C9 is the authorization for deduction to change order, Dominion Construction. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Feldman, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C10 is the authorization to accept a donation. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Chang, seconded by Ms. Falcove. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C11 is the disposal of broken surplus and/or obsolete equipment and books. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Feldman, seconded by Mr. Ulrich. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? May I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you.